We're not there yet.
Donna Brazile asking the country to be patient tonight. We do have some news coming in here. The decision desk here at ABC News has not projected Georgia, but we can report that Georgia's Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, has now said at a press conference moments ago that Donald Trump has a, quote, insurmountable lead with the number of votes outstanding in the state of Georgia. He said it looks like this is pretty much done. I think the results are pretty well baked in. And of course, you all at home remember our reporting on Raffensperger, the Republican who famously stood firm during that key phone call when Donald Trump asked, just find me the 11,000 votes when he lost to Joe Biden. So this is not someone who's necessarily obviously very friendly with Donald Trump. He stands by the process. He stands by the hard work in that state to make sure that this election was safe. And tonight, moments ago, again, we haven't projected this at ABC News, but the Secretary of State in Georgia saying this is insurmountable that Donald Trump has won there.
And look, Brad Raffensperger is a Republican. He's elected Republican, but he is a straight shooter. No doubt about it. So, again, we haven't called it, but I would take what he said very seriously.
Let's get right to the ground in Georgia. Steve Osunsami in Atlanta. Steve, what do you make of this? And you've talked with the Secretary of State. Facts are facts, and he has said that it looks like it's insurmountable at this point.
Well, as John said, he is a straight shooter. You know, when I talked with him, he told me that, his job is to call balls and strikes, not to put his finger on the scale. His reputation speaks for himself on that issue. I will tell you that we've all been here, the producer I work with, Brandon Bauer, we've been really practicing our math skills, trying to figure out, whether or not there are enough votes for Harris to make up the deficit, which at one point was about 150,000 votes. We're seeing those votes come in from the different county, and it's not clear, as Raffensperger has pointed out, that there are enough votes, even if she were to continue sort of the break that she has had in some of those counties and some of those vote-rich counties like Fulton, Cobb, Gwinnett, where there's still a little bit of vote outstanding to make up that deficit. I'll tell you, I've also talked with both campaigns. The Trump campaign is celebrating tonight. They're already looking forward to being able to say that this is a state that they won. They point out that they did very, very well in the rural counties. We had a setup here, rural versus urban, and they clearly performed well in the rural counties. Some of those counties where we saw up to 70% turnout, those counties made a difference. What's interesting is when you look at the numbers and the turnout here and the way the vote fell, it wasn't that Harris did so much terribly than Biden performed 4 years ago. What you do see is that in the rural counties, the rural voters showed up and showed out.
I wonder, Steve, if part of that is the encouragement to vote early, the combination of early voting and day of voting, if that did just help them rack up the vote, the Republican Party in Georgia. When you look at sort of county by county, I think your point is well made, that they were really able to increase the margins. And I was saying with Rick Klein earlier, Donald Trump has outperformed himself in many cases, even what he did in 2016.
We saw a huge early vote among Republicans, which we didn't see in years past. We were sort of expecting, a lot of people were expecting that what we were going to see today was that when the pre-vote came out, that Harris would have a significant lead, or it would have been closer than it was. But I think that evaporated in large part because we saw so many Republicans in the pre-vote stand in line in the Republican counties that had pre-votes. One thing that's interesting is something else we saw today. There are a number of counties where there isn't an early vote. A lot of these red counties also had good turnout today. We didn't see, as we were driving around the city and sort of anecdotally talking to different people, we didn't see the craziness that we've seen in years past. And a lot of that is because a lot of this election happened in the pre-vote. That's when most of this was decided.
Steve-O in Atlanta. Steve Osunsami, thanks so much. Ryan, what do you make of this?
Well, it's not where you want to be if you're the Harris campaign, on one hand. On the other hand, there was never the Trump campaign was always planning on winning Georgia and North Carolina. But clearly Kamala Harris's team decided that maybe they could get lucky and pick one of these two off. It's not over yet, but the fact that they spent so much time there thinking that they might get lucky there, it doesn't look like they will. And now all their eggs are going to be in that blue wall. The other thing that's interesting about all this tonight is that one change in the law from 2020 to 2024, these states are counting a lot of these early votes right now. I mean, Georgia started counting this morning. North Carolina started counting at 5 o'clock. Wisconsin 7, Michigan 7, Pennsylvania 7. One note, and Rick hit it earlier, which is important about Wisconsin. Right now, the last I checked, Donald Trump has a lead of about 38,000 votes. That was just a few minutes ago. I don't know if it held. But there's 31,000 ballots that still need to be counted in Milwaukee. So the Republicans in Wisconsin are saying Donald Trump's going to have about a 21 to 24,000 vote lead before those 31,000 votes get counted. So this is going to be very, very close. And if you look at Racine and Kenosha County down in the southeast corner, you'll see that those two counties together, if you go up one north in Racine, there's only 23% in, but that's a huge, those are some huge numbers where they need to be.
So let's just drill down on that, Ryan. So what are your sources telling you? Where does Donald Trump need to be before these final votes in some of these Democrat-rich counties?
Right. People believe, and I was just talking to Governor Walker on text about this, and he agrees that Donald Trump needs to have about a 21,000 vote lead before those 31,000 absentee ballots get counted or entered into the system in Milwaukee that are still sitting out there. So it's, he's got a 41,000, Trump's got a 41,000 vote lead right now. There's more to come, and there's more blue votes to come in as well. So a long way to go, but rather be Donald Trump here than Kamala Harris.
In Wisconsin.
Kamala Harris.
Say that again, Donna?
I would rather be Kamala Harris. Look, you know the state better than I know it, but I also know how difficult it is to get all of the votes counted in Milwaukee. And also Dane. I mean, Dane had not only a significant early vote, but also a great turnout today with the same-day registration, as well as some of the young people in line. So I still believe the verdict is still out. We may not know Milwaukee, the final verdict, until sometime tomorrow morning.
It's too
early.
You could be right.
Well, you owe me a beer.
I don't think you're going to be right, but you could be. I'm not saying
I'll
it's
take
over.
Milwaukee best.
I mean,
I'd rather be where we're at.
Spotted cow. But Dane County, they've already counted 94% of the vote. And she seems to have fallen short. That's a...
John, these are razor-thin margin.
Yeah,
I
for
mean,
sure.
come on, let's not try
let's
to
look at
win
the,
by a blowout. I mean, she's getting there.
But
Let's look at the map that shows the outstanding vote, Rick.
Yeah,
by party here.
Yeah, I mean that's Milwaukee. That's exactly what Ryan's just talking about. It's a huge amount of vote that is Milwaukee. That's why 43,000 is not necessarily a safe lead. Madison, a little bit of a smaller dot, but there's some red spots on the map as well. You go out to the west to St. Croix. I mean, we don't really have any vote there to speak of at all. So there's still Republican votes too, but Ryan's is right. I mean, as with all three of these Midwestern cities, we're not really going to know until we have a complete portrait of what's going on inside Philadelphia, where there's still, according to our numbers, about 120,000 votes that are outstanding. That's just Philadelphia, not even counting its suburbs. Similarly, if you go up to Michigan, we don't have a lot in Detroit, only about 15,000. That's another 750,000 votes in Detroit, Dearborn, in Wayne County. And as we just talked about, Milwaukee. But those are the big urban areas, and that's what makes any lead right now potentially illusory. North Carolina and Georgia does look different right now, David. It's very hard to see how that ground gets made up, because you start to see those blue dots shrink over time, and there's less and less vote. And if you get into it, you realize, Fulton County, that's 93,000 or 93% of the vote in, only 41,000 left. So where you get enough votes to shrink the margin becomes difficult to see at this hour. Mecklenburg, Charlotte already came in as well, and we're starting to see Trump, really romp the score. I mean, this is obviously not a meaningful number at the end of the night, but as of now, he's winning the popular vote by 5,600,000 votes. That will change with California. There's a lot of votes out there, but that's not a result that a lot of people saw coming, that it would even be close on the popular vote side. I think it's a function of all that rural run-up and how close he has kept it in all these other states.
Extraordinary night unfolding. Rick Klein over at the big board. Rick, thanks. We do have some calls at this hour. ABC News can now project that Oregon, that Vice President Kamala Harris will pick up the 8 electoral votes from Oregon. She has won the state of Oregon. She's also won the state of Washington tonight. The 12 electoral votes from Washington will go to Kamala Harris. And we have a race to call in California tonight in the Senate race. Congressman Adam Schiff, 12-term congressman in California, beats Republican Steve Garvey. Obviously, that was an open seat after Dianne Feinstein, the late Dianne Feinstein. Let's get right to Kayna Whitworth in California covering this race. Kayna, what can you tell us?
Yeah, so David, this will now be the first time in 3 decades that California will be represented by 2 male senators, and it is certainly an exciting night here for Democrats in California. We are at the Democratic Party where they do actually expect Adam Schiff to address the crowd here momentarily. This has been a race that Democrats have been very, very confident in this win. He is certainly a name known well across this country in terms of politics. He has been one of the leaders against Donald Trump in several issues, and he feels like anytime Donald Trump invokes his name negatively, that actually bodes well for him and his campaign. He's also been spending a tremendous amount of his own political capital helping other races in other battleground states, as well as down ballot races here in California, in particular, some of those hotly contested and very expensive House races in particular. And you guys, I just spoke with Rusty Hicks, who is the California Democratic Party chair, and he said, you know, California is generous with time, talent, and treasure, and he says they have doubled down on that this year because of who is at the top of the ticket, the daughter of California and Kamala Harris. He says they're sending busloads of people. They're making phone calls in other battleground states, David, including Nevada and Arizona.
All right, Kayna Whitworth on the ground in California. Kayna, our thanks to you. I want to get right back over to Rachel Scott. Rachel, you got some interesting numbers coming in from Pennsylvania.
Yeah, and really looking at State College. This is the county of Center. This is home to Penn State, and this is a college town here. So Vice President Kamala Harris hoping to do well here. David, I want to show you President Biden won this county. Clinton won this county. Vice President Kamala Harris underperforming where she needs to be at this moment, according to our 538 benchmark. Take a look at this. She needs to be at 51%. She's at 47%. Donald Trump ahead. This county has gone Democratic for the last 20 years. And right now, with 81% of the vote in, Donald Trump ahead.
Very interesting. And I think there's going to be a lot about the youth vote and how it broke down and whether or not the gender gap bears out that we've reported on, John.
And Trump had a huge rally in State College in these closing days. It was one of his biggest of the final rallies. A lot of college students turning out, waiting in line for a long time, sitting through a long rally. Really quite a story.
And you have some exit polls on the youth vote in Pennsylvania. What are you seeing?
Yes, Donald Trump actually doing 8 points better with the group 18 to 29 than he did when he was in 2020. But Kamala Harris is winning. It's still just that he's doing better than he did. 53% of the vote, a little more than half, going for Kamala Harris. And this is a group that certainly she has gone after. She has talked about how Gen Z is impatient for change. The baton is in our hands. She's talked multiple times about a new way forward. We're seeing more of the same in Wisconsin, where she's edging him out, but still he's doing much better than he did in 2020. Here she has half of that youth vote in Wisconsin for that 18 to 29, but Donald Trump's still outperforming himself from 2020.
Wow, it's really interesting because when I was over looking at Wisconsin with you, we were looking at Madison, and I was wondering if the youth vote and the gender gap is going to become a story in some of these key counties. And when you see Lindsay saying that Kamala Harris eking out by 2 points in the exit polls among young voters, and what is the benchmark of where she should be in Dane County? I mean, obviously she's beating him there, but
a full point behind, and that's exactly it. And it's not just the percentages; it's often going to be turnout as well. And this is a county that Biden was able to get, I think, around 180,000 votes out of it. I talked to someone, a Wisconsin specialist, who said that's what you need. For years now, Reince knows this better than anyone. Democrats have been running up the score in Madison, the liberal college town, and said got as much as they can, and maybe they reached a limit tonight.
I think it's really interesting. Thanks, Rick. We're going to stay on this. We're going to be laser focused on Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, which We sound like a broken record. We say this every 4 years or so. And I think it's interesting that both Reince and Donna believe that this is going to be very close, particularly in a state like Wisconsin. And, Reince is from there, so he knows Wisconsin better than any of us. So the numbers continue to come in. We'll be right back. Your local news. We're going to check in with your local news teams, and we'll see you a short time from now. Our live coverage of Election Night 2024 in a moment.
David Muir, ABC's World News Tonight, the most watched newscast in America, and honored with the Emmy Award, winner for Outstanding Live News Program. More Americans watch World News Tonight with David Muir than any other newscast. Right now,